Hello, I'm Steve from Rekord. Welcome to our channel, where we post everything about cars, not only reviews, drives, but also professional coaching. So if you want to learn more about cars and how to drive them, make sure you subscribe. Today, we're going to be taking this beauty out. This is a 15-year-old Lotus Elise, the car that saved Lotus in the mid-1990s. Standing by it, you can just see how small this thing is. It comes up to my waist. So you have to be very careful when you're on the road. Keep a good eye out for all the big SUVs and trucks that are out there. So let's hop on board and get out there. Today we are heading out in my 2005 Lotus Elise, which I have owned since new. It is a nightfall blue metallic over red leather. I bought this car in 2005 when I moved from Montreal to Stamford, Connecticut. The car was not available in Canada, so when I knew that I was moving to the States, I immediately put an order in and picked it up the day after I arrived there. It currently has just over 40,000 miles on it, so it's just nicely run in. A lot of those miles have been on the racetrack. These cars were built to go on the racetrack, so the number of track miles really does not matter. It's a great little car, and Natasha today is sitting next to me in the passenger seat because there is nowhere else for her to sit. So the first Elise that the US market got hold of was the Series 2. 2005 was the first year that it was made, and for federalization they sourced a Toyota drivetrain, which personally I think was a great choice. It's the 2ZZ engine and transmission out of the defunct Celica GTS. In the Elise it generates 189 horsepower, I think, and 138 pound-feet of torque, which may not sound like much, but when it's only having to shift just under 2,000 pounds, it really doesn't matter. Well, the head is developed by Yamaha, I believe. Lotus put their own intake and exhaust on it, and their own ECU tune, so it hits the hot cam at 6,200 RPM and red lines at 8,000 RPM, but will allow 8,500 for about a second and a half before the limiter kicks in. So it's a very sprightly little car, underpowered by today's standards, and it really can't hold its own in a straight line on a racetrack, but it handles superbly in the corners. And this was my first car that I ever drove on a racetrack, and it's how I learned my racecraft in one of these. And it's a really good car to learn in. Because it handles so well. It teaches you about momentum, because it really doesn't pick up very well if you come off the cam coming out of corners. So you're really trying to keep the speed up, keep the revs up, and despite being a British sports car, it's been very, very reliable. Of course, now I've said that, it'll break down today. Got the roof on because it was 105 degrees when I left home, and sitting in this car with the sun blazing down on you with no top on is not fun. So this car had the optional touring package, which was leather seats, a little bit of extra insulation, which is just a bit of foam behind the rear panel, and electric windows. And it made the car a little bit more livable, because when I was living in Connecticut, this was my daily driver during the summer. I also ordered a hardtop, which was great, but unfortunately that died a death on the track one day when, for one reason or another, it wasn't secured properly on one of the mounts on the front, and the low pressure zone above it at about 100 miles an hour ripped the roof off. I wasn't driving it, my son was driving it, and Kai, one of my friends, was actually instructing him at the time. And when they came back past the pits, I kind of questioned myself, didn't they have a hard top on that when they went out? And they both said it came as a great surprise. There was this loud bang, and then all of a sudden it was open sky. So when it's hot, the soft top goes on. It's got a non-standard soft top. All the cars came with a black top, but mine got eaten by a mouse in storage one winter in Connecticut. So I had it remade with a red roof to match the upholstery. So it's quite distinctive. It's a very nippy little car, 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds, I believe they said, on launch, and it will top out at just under 150 miles an hour. So it's no slouch. You really have to work the gears. It's got the 6-speed transmission, so it's a very involving car to drive. A lot of people complain that the pedals are too close together. Those people have obviously never driven a Lotus 7, and the pedals really are close together on those. But the pedals are actually in a really good position to heel and toe. The brake has quite a lot of travel before it bites, and it's a very particular heel and toe technique where you're turning your foot completely sideways and then rolling the knee. But once you get used to it, it actually works very, very well. This was a track car, and it lived at the racetrack, and then when I replaced it with something that was slightly faster, I decided to bring it home and I would drive it again. And I'd taken out everything that I could take out from the interior. I put a harness bar in, and so I took that out, put the interior panel back in, the carpets back in, and I took out the factory radio, which has got to be the worst stereo ever. So I removed that. I put in a JVC head unit that I had lying around, and I actually put in a subwoofer behind the driver's seat. It sits on, there's a small shelf there, so it sits on that shelf. And so now I've actually got a decent stereo in this. One thing you do notice on the roads is how small this car is. It's not just low, but the cockpit is also very narrow. You've got very wide sills to get over, and those actually make a nice armrest. But once you've clambered over those, your driving position is very nearly in the middle of the car, and the driver's seat is actually a little wider than the passenger seat, so the passenger gets pretty cramped. It's just about the right size for Natasha, the dog, at the moment. You've got to be friends, because you are sitting literally shoulder to shoulder. You can probably see the passenger seat right next to me here. It really typifies Colin Chapman's credo of adding lightness. There is nothing unneeded in this car. So for example, there's only one window switch on the driver's side. Typically in a car you have a switch to wind down the passenger window from the driver's side. But this car is so small, you can just reach across and use the switch on the passenger side. This morning I was out for a drive and I had to adjust the exterior mirror. There are no motors or controls on the inside to adjust the mirrors. So you just open the window and lean out, and it's close enough you can change it by hand. So everything is manual. It's surprising that it has power windows, but I did read something back in the day that the power window motors are actually lighter than the hand crank mechanism. There's virtually no storage. There's a shelf that runs across the front of the car, and if you put anything on that, it slides around like crazy. There's a couple of little cubbies, like one is big enough to get my wallet in, and there's another one where I can get my keys in. There is a very rudimentary cup holder in between the two seats here, and the dog's water is sitting in that at the moment. But you can't actually get at it while you're driving, so that doesn't work. The seats are actually very comfortable. They're excellent for track use. They hold you very, very well. There is one adjustment on the, well, there's two adjustments on the seats. One, there's a manual forward and aft slider, so you can adjust for distance from the steering wheel and pedals. Plus, there's a little rubber ball where you can inflate a lumbar support, and that's it. So if you're planning on doing a long trip in one of these, it's a good idea to think about a stop after a couple of hours, because there's only one position that you sit in, and you can't really adjust how you're sitting. One of the added benefits of a very small gas tank, I think it's 10.4 gallons, is you have to stop every couple of hours anyway to fill up, so that gives you a good opportunity to stretch your legs. As you can probably hear, you hear every single bump that you go over in this car. So as you can hear, it's not exactly quiet. And you can hear the hot cam kick in there at 6,200 RPM, and it gives quite a noticeable boost in power. Most people who drive this car short shift, they just don't realize how high the revs can go and how you have to go to get all the power out of the car. So when it hits 6,000, it's just starting to get going. So this is a teeny tiny car. You're sitting very low. You're also very close to the center, and the way it's styled, because it's mid-engine in the rear, you've got no bulge in front of you, so you've got the two wheel arches, and then the front of the car drops down in between them, so you can sight the car in corners very, very well. It's very easy to see where you are in relation to the road. And the steering there's no power assistance to it, but you can feel everything on the road. You can drive it just with your fingertips. It's very communicative steering. It really is a pleasure to drive. So this car is 15 years old. It doesn't look 15 years old, and I think the styling has held up extremely well over the years. There was a lot of innovative engineering in this car, most notable of which is the extruded and bonded chassis. It's made out of extruded aluminium and then glued together with aircraft adhesive, and you can actually see some of that orange adhesive oozing out of the joins. It made for a very rigid, very light chassis, and I think that the tub weighs 150 pounds, and that's it. So they used lightweight materials throughout. It's a glass fiber body, and one of the downsides of the body is that it's basically two panels. You've got a front clamshell and a rear clamshell, and you see a lot of these cars with salvage titles because insurance companies have written them off, because if they have a really small accident, you have to replace one or other or both of the clamshells, and that can get extremely expensive. I know from personal experience, I had a minor accident in this car, and unfortunately I hit both the front and the rear. It didn't do any damage to the chassis itself, but both clamshells had to be replaced, along with some of the radiator mounts and so on and so forth. And it cost a fortune. So if you have one of these, don't get into an accident with it. If you're looking for one and you see one with a salvage title, there's probably not much wrong with it. It's just bodywork that the insurance company didn't feel was financially viable to fix. Well, this is quite a bumpy road that we're going through, and you feel every bump in this car. But the car is not unsettled by bumps at all. Like it will go through these corners at quite phenomenal speeds, and it inspires a great degree of confidence. The car is going to go where you point it. Oh, there's that lovely dip. It always surprises me when we go through that. So yeah, the car is very predictable. At the factory, they designed it with, there's another dip here. They designed it with understeer. They put pretty narrow wheels on the front to actually protect the uninitiated driver, because once you get one of these things out of shape, oh, the road is closed. What I was going to say, once you get one of these things out of shape, it's very, very difficult to get back. We're going to have to stop here. The road is closed because of an extreme fire danger. Right, so that was a bit of a disappointment. The road we were going to go on is closed because of an extreme fire danger. And so then it's not good to go on it, is it? So we're going to turn around and go home because Tasha is feeling a little hot, aren't you? Yep. Right, let's go. Here comes somebody in a Jaguar. They're going to be upset that the road is closed. The road doesn't go anywhere. I've mentioned this before. It's just a really nice twisty road with some really sharp hairpins that just goes up into the hills past the old Sears Cave ruin. This car really is such a joy to drive, and because of its light weight, it's really surprising how relatively economical it is. It's not very economical on the track. I think the official rating is 27 miles a gallon on the highway, and I'd kind of agree with that. I was getting, for mixed driving, some highway, some city driving, I was getting comfortably 250 miles on a tank. And as I said, the tank is tiny. It's 10.4 gallons. And then on a highway stretch, I could get close to 300 as long as I was driving at sensible speeds. On the track, when it's on the hot cam all the time, you get about 10 miles to the gallon, which for a track car still isn't bad. One of the great things about this car, because it is very light, it's very easy on consumables. So tires last a long time, brake pads last a long time. A lot of people were very critical of brake discs not lasting very long. I didn't find that. I think I've replaced the discs at some point, given the amount of track use that I put into. I know I've replaced the pads a lot, and I find it doesn't use the brake discs tremendously, because this isn't the type of car where you're doing a lot of really heavy braking and you haven't got a lot of mass to slow down. It's a momentum car, so you're trying to carry as much speed as possible through the corners. So you can probably hear there's a fair amount of wind noise in this car. It's not a luxury touring car, and if you're in the market for one of these, it's not. You're going to be disappointed if you're expecting something like a Porsche Boxster. It'll perform as well as the contemporary, actually as the contemporary Boxcar S, because that was a little bit under engine when they first brought it out. But it just doesn't have the luxury. There's lots of hard plastics, very basic seats. As I said, you can't adjust them. There's no storage, no cup holders. It's noisy, it rattles. It's great. These cars hold their value really well, and if anything, they're going up in value. This became a pure track car. I left it at the track. It was used just for that. Then when I got my other car, I actually used this car a lot as a student car. So whenever we had anybody that was new to the track, they would take this car out because it was a very safe car to drive on track. You can really learn about car dynamics, driving lines, cornering speed without having too much power under your foot, but you can still have a lot of fun in this car. And it served me really, really well. It's been a great car, and now it's been retired from that kind of life. It's served me great again as an occasional driver. This is a reasonably rare car. You don't see many of them around. One of the reasons you don't see a lot of them around is a lot of people don't daily drive them. They are kind of weekend toys that they use, and oftentimes they're kept away in the garage. They'll just appear from time to time. There aren't a huge number of these, and a number of them have been written off because of the cost of repairing the bodywork. So that probably explains why you don't see many of these around these days. The air conditioning isn't the best air conditioning in the world, I will say that, but the cabin is so small that it's not really having to do a lot of work. So it keeps you comfortable. It's a little warm in here. The dog isn't panting, which is always a good indicator of how warm it is in the car. Sight lines out of this car are not great. The rear three-quarter view is really, really bad. It doesn't matter whether the top is on or off. You just can't see on that rear three-quarter view. So if you're backing into a parking space, it can be a little bit difficult because you just don't know where the back of the car is. And you're sitting so low, you can't see anything behind you as well. There is a surprising amount of room in the trunk. Not a place to put your groceries if you want them to keep cool though, because the trunk is right behind the engine and it does get a little toasty in there. As long as you are using soft bags, you can actually get a fair amount of kit in the trunk. Even with the soft top rolled up and in its bag in the trunk, you can still get a couple of small bags in there, enough for a weekend. I used to drive this car from the New York area where I lived up to Montreal to go visit family. My two sons still lived up there when I was there, so I would go fairly often up there, and it's like 5.5 hours, 6 hour drive. It can actually be done in a bit less than that. But it was a very comfortable car to drive up there. You have to stop for gas a couple of times because the tank is so small, but you want to stretch your legs there at that point anyway. And easily get enough in the trunk for the weekend. And so all in all, I've been very, very happy with this car. No regrets about buying it. And it's a real pleasure to be able to do something like I'm doing today, and taking it out and sharing it with you. Now, getting in and out of one of these cars is a bit of a contortionist act, particularly with the roof on. With the roof off, you can just stand on the seat. But look at this. So if you like this video and want to see more, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.